Hello there, this is Mitch Murray. If you own a shortwave radio, you are lucky enough to have at your fingertips a space and time machine. Any time of the day or night, you have the power to listen into sounds being made thousands of miles away, all from the comfort of your own armchair. Your receiver has the unique ability to bring you information and entertainment at the speed of light from all parts of the world, even from outer space. It can help you learn a language, pursue a hobby, study the lives and cultures of people many thousands of miles away, or give you endless hours of pleasure with music and drama. You can eavesdrop on messages between aircraft and ground control, ship to shore, explorers in the North Pole, missionaries in Africa, or linger a while with the world's exciting network of amateur broadcasters. There's nothing quite like the thrill of shortwave listening, a truly unique and satisfying hobby, and I hope this recording helps to further your knowledge and interest in DXing. The subject of shortwave is so vast that it would be impossible to be truly comprehensive or to attempt to cover every aspect in the short time available to us. However, I will do my best to provide you with a solid background to the subject and will also tell you where to get further information and guidance, whether it be from books, publications, or DX clubs. They all have a part to play. The first users of shortwave broadcasting were radio amateurs. From the beginnings of radio, all communications took place above 200 meters or 1.5 megahertz. But the hams who were not able to use high power for their transmissions started to experiment with higher frequencies in order to expand their activities. They found that as they went into the shorter waves, they were able to reach longer distances. And it wasn't long before broadcast stations and other communicators jumped onto the bandwagon, so that today we have the situation where most long-distance broadcasting is carried out between 3 and 30 megahertz. At this point, I think it worth mentioning that the term hertz merely means cycles per second, in other words, the frequency. The term was named after the German physicist Heinrich Hertz, one of the pioneers of radio transmission. 10 kilohertz is equivalent to 10,000 cycles per second, and of course 10 megahertz means 10 million cycles per second. In the booklet issued with this album, you will find the formula for conversion from meters to frequency and vice versa. Some radio stations will only announce their whereabouts in one format, and if your radio doesn't have both a meter and a hertz readout, you will on occasion need the know-how to convert. The formula is wavelength in meters equals 300 divided by the frequency in megahertz. You will also find the reverse of this formula in the booklet so that you may make your own conversion. Despite modern receiver techniques and the high power which is used in radio transmissions, at times the radio wave just doesn't make it. This is because the transmission of radio is dependent upon the atmosphere of the Earth and the effects of the sun. Shortwaves travel vast distances because they are able to bounce around the world using the ionosphere as a reflective surface. Take a look at the diagram in the booklet. When we are talking of an area of thousands of miles, the radio signal will have to make several leaps to reach its goal, and conditions along the route will affect the way it's received. In order to overcome a change of conditions as simple as daylight and darkness over the transmission path, broadcast stations constantly have to change wave bands. The subject of propagation is vast and complicated, but it's certainly worth studying in depth if you're a serious shortwave listener. Learn about the various layers of the Earth's atmosphere and how they affect the radio wave. Follow the frequencies recommended by the international broadcasting organizations for your part of the world. Listen in on high frequencies during daylight and lower bands during darkness. Don't be too disappointed if you don't hear a station you feel should be there. It could be due to a multitude of conditions, including one called SID, sudden ionospheric disturbance, which can be so sensational that you may believe there is something wrong in your receiver. Now let us have a look at the whole radio spectrum. You can divide the radio spectrum into 7 parts. Firstly, the very low frequency band. This begins at approximately 10 kilohertz and rises to 30. The long-wave broadcasting band runs from 30 to 300 kilohertz, and the medium-wave broadcasting band covers 300 kilohertz to 3 megahertz. Now we come to the 3 to 30 megahertz band, which, as I said before, is the shortwave or high-frequency band. Next comes VHF, very high frequencies, 30 to 300 megahertz, and these are used for high-quality sound reproduction and stereo broadcasting, as well as some television and point-to-point communications. We are now getting into the really high frequencies. The UHF band is 300 to 3,000 megahertz, and many more television transmissions use this range. The super high-frequency band, SHF, ranges from 3,000 to above 21,000 megahertz, and these are the frequencies used extensively by radar. Now, if you've come across the term gigahertz, this means 1,000 million cycles, or 1,000 megahertz. Now that we have looked at all the frequency ranges carrying interceptable signals for most purposes, let us examine some in detail. In the booklet, you will find a list of the broadcast bands beginning at the low-frequency end, and you will find the meter bands and their frequency equivalents. In between the 9 shortwave broadcast bands, there are many other transmissions. One type is known as fixed and mobile. This covers aircraft-to-ground control, ship-to-ship, police, ambulance, fire services, and a vast amount of others. While tuning in between the broadcast bands, you will hear some very strange sounds indeed. You may have put this down to interference, static, and other phenomena, but in fact, nearly everything you hear is some form of communication, and right now I will try to help you identify them. Have a listen to this. This is the sound of facsimile telegraphy. The radio sounds you hear are used for transmitting pictures by shortwave. With the correct equipment, photographs and charts can be transmitted many thousands of miles. This system is used by satellites transmitting weather photographs of the Earth and the press agencies transmitting photographs for reproduction in newspapers. There's a system called RTTY, which, although not as dramatic as facsimile telegraphy, is very widely used and is a very common occupant of the shortwaves. RTTY transmits messages by teletype. These messages may be in the form of international telegrams or press agency reports. They may be used by governments sending in their weekly messages to embassies all over the world, by international police organizations transmitting criminal records, or for weather forecasting. This is the sound of RTTY in action. To receive RTTY, you need a converter and a teletype machine. You may very well find these items quite cheaply at government surplus stores. And then, with a little know-how, you can link them to your receiver so that when the sound of RTTY comes over the air, your converter goes into action and your teleprinter prints out the message like this. Many amateurs communicate by RTTY and also by using slow-scan television, which is a system of transmitting still television pictures by shortwave. This is the sound of one of those pictures building up. For a really accurate time check, there is nothing like tuning into one of the world's time and frequency stations. Most of these stations are run by government agencies. Some of them are commercial and some of them are military. The United States Navy, for instance, has several of these stations to assist the adjustment of navigational equipment. Some stations have voice announcements at regular intervals, and others, particularly the military stations, use Morse code, CW. This is the sound of the time and frequency station WWVH, transmitting from Hawaii.
At the tone, 23 hours, 29 minutes, Coordinated Universal Time. National Bureau of Standards, WWVH, Kikaha, Hawaii. This station broadcasts on the internationally allocated standard carrier frequencies of 2.5, 5, 10, and 15 megahertz, providing time of day, standard time interval, and other related information. Inquiries regarding these transmissions may be directed to the National Bureau of Standards, Time and Frequency Services Section, Boulder, Colorado, 80302. Aloha.
The GPO station in Rugby, England, call sign MSF, transmits on 2,500 kilohertz, 5,000 kilohertz, and 10,000 kilohertz. Here it is. You have a very good chance of receiving a time and frequency station wherever you live in the world. A full list can be found in the Complete Shortwave Listener's Handbook by Hank Bennett. More details about this can be found in the booklet. If you come across this sound on your receiver, you are listening to signals from outer space. This is the sound of a satellite relaying messages to an Earth station. Radio amateurs have a good friend in Oscar. Oscar is a satellite used by hams on the 10-meter band in over 100 countries. It stands for Operating Satellite Carrying Amateur Radio, and there are several Oscars in orbit at the moment. During a normal evening, you can always rely on hearing them once or twice. Set your dial to around 29.5 megahertz and switch on your BFO. If you don't have a BFO control, use either CW or SSB modes. When an Oscar passes overhead or nearby, the band will come alive with signals. These will become stronger as Oscar gets nearer and then drop off as the satellite disappears across the horizon. You will hear a marked change in pitch to the CW signals due to the effect of what is called the Doppler shift. The advantage of this effect is that it is reasonably good evidence that the signals are coming to you via a satellite. The use of satellites is, of course, quite common with regard to weather pictures, which are relayed to Earth in facsimile form. You heard an example of the fax signal sound earlier. If you can get hold of a converter capable of tuning around the 136 to 138 megahertz range, you may well pick up some of the sounds coming from the United States, Soviet, and Chinese satellites. These VHF converters are available from SEM, P.O. Box 6, Castletown, here on the Isle of Man. Keep listening around these ranges whenever a new space mission is launched, and you may well be lucky. If you wish to try receiving signals from a little further afield, you may be fortunate enough to pick up Jupiter. Of course, the planet Jupiter does not actually operate a radio station, but it has a natural radiation which, when certain parts of the planet are facing Earth, produces radio signals of a low-pitched, growling nature. Listen out for Jupiter around the 5, 10, and 15 megahertz frequencies used by WWV. The shortwave listening hobby can be very enjoyable whether you are listening to stations on a small portable with restricted shortwave facilities or on a more expensive communications receiver. Even the cheapest receiver is capable of worldwide reception, and nowadays you can achieve a high degree of sensitivity from the most modest radio. The minimum range you should aim for is 3 to 30 megahertz. But as you venture into the areas of more sophisticated radios, choose one with the frequency ranges and controls for your DX interest. If you like DXing hams, there are many receivers which concentrate on the amateur bands. One essential facility, if you are a follower of the amateur bands, is a BFO, a beat frequency oscillator. This will enable you to receive and decode single sideband and CW signals. Most amateur transmissions nowadays are SSB, and many receivers are available with the two selectable sideband positions, USB, upper sideband, and LSB, lower sideband. This is the sound of a single sideband voice transmission. Let's bring it into focus by operating the sideband controls. Long live shortwave. For receiving CW transmissions, you will find it most useful to have a receiver able to tune a narrow bandwidth. If your interest lies in the AM broadcast bands, and this is where we find the world's shortwave radio stations, you will need a general coverage receiver. Let me talk about one or two of the other features you may find on your receiver. Many radios feature an automatic noise limiter, ANL. Although by no means essential, the ANL can be quite useful, particularly in dealing with peaks of noise. A similar job is done by a noise blanker. Another feature you may find is AGC, automatic gain control. This control keeps the receiver's gain at its maximum for weak signals and yet controls the sudden blasting out of a loud signal. You may find an antenna trimmer. This will help peak signals received by your aerial. The S-meter is a very useful addition to your radio. This indicates the relative amount of signal being received and is a great help when tuning. Probably the most important aspect of a shortwave radio to the DXer is an accurate frequency readout. On some portables or cheaper sets, this tuning is assisted somewhat by band spread, but you generally find that the higher the price you pay for a shortwave radio, the more accurate it is. Some of the better shortwave sets these days have digital readout, and this is real luxury. But in addition to this, there are many variations of frequency readout facilities, and when choosing a shortwave set, try to find one which is both accurate and easy to use. Stability is an important part of a receiver. You may tune into one frequency when first you switch your radio on, but if the receiver is not stable, after it has warmed up, it may well have drifted quite a long way from the original location. It's a good idea in any case to warm up your receiver for about 10 minutes so that it assumes its normal operating temperature. When buying a receiver, take well into account selectivity and sensitivity. As a guide, when you are looking at specifications, the smaller the microvolt number, the better as far as sensitivity is concerned. And regarding selectivity, narrowest is usually best. A necessary part of your receiver is the provision for an external aerial. If you're using one of the cheaper portables, which includes a shortwave band, you may well find no connection for an external antenna at all. Even this may be partially overcome by winding about half a dozen turns of insulated copper wire around the extended rod aerial and dropping the end of the wire outside your window. No metallic connection to the set is necessary. However sensitive your receiver may be, it has to be fed with an adequate amount of energy from the passing radio wave, and in fact the first step in DXing is the aerial, or antenna. The serious shortwave listener should use an outside aerial. When the wave passes through any substance, the walls or steel structure of a building, its energy is absorbed and becomes much weaker. When erecting your antenna, keep it as far away as possible from trees and other obstacles, and in particular power lines, because these radiate a strong field of unwanted noise. Keep the lead in to the receiver as short as possible, and you will then be maximizing the signal-to-noise ratio. Strand copper wire is the most practical to use, as it will withstand tension and bad weather conditions, but it need not have an insulated covering. There should be, however, an insulation between the aerial and any contact points before reaching the receiver. It is most important to keep your lead-in wire away from electrical cables and domestic equipment. In the booklet issued with this album, you will find some diagrams of different antenna types. If you live in an apartment and have no garden in which to put your aerial, you may well achieve some excellent results with a good internal aerial. If you have an attic, this would be ideal, but if you have to put your aerial in the room in which your receiver is used, put it in such a position as to maximize the signals coming to you from the area of the world in which you are interested. The DX hobby is enjoyed by millions around the world. Nobody knows for sure what DX stands for, but its meaning is clear. Long-distance reception. People will DX almost anything. Medium wave, long wave, short wave, television, FM, utility broadcasts. The list is growing all the time. When propagation conditions are favorable, the DXer will enthusiastically listen out for stations which are not intended for his ears at all. It's all part of the fun. Every hobby is enhanced by having a goal. If you're painting, you look forward to the finished result. If you're writing music, it's often with the hope of a public performance or that somebody will put it on record. Shortwave listening also has a goal, the QSL. When a shortwave listener locates a distant station, he should make a note of the frequency, when it was received using Greenwich Mean Time and the correct date. He should give details of about 15 minutes of the program content, what was said, what music was played, or any other relevant facts. He should describe his receiver and aerial and also give the station some technical information. One way of doing this is by using the SINPO code. SINPO stands for signal strength, interference, noise, propagation disturbance, and overall merit. In the booklet supplied with this album, you will find details of the SINPO grading, which will help you when sending out reports to radio stations. The stations find these reports most valuable from a technical and programming point of view. Your reward will come to you in the shape of a QSL card, which is normally a colourful picture postcard from the country of origin with the station logo and a verification that you have indeed received their signal. Should you request it, they may also send you program sheets, magazines, and many other souvenirs. One word of advice, however. Enclose with your report an international reply coupon, which you can obtain from your post office. This will help with the postage and will encourage the station to reply promptly. For most DXers, a working knowledge of the English language is essential. However, many experienced shortwave listeners make it their business to learn a few key words in each of the main broadcast languages. This greatly enlarges their QSL ability and improves their hobby all the way round. For students of political science or international affairs, shortwave listening can be a great help to their education. If you are studying a language, DXing not only gives you a chance to hear that language, but many stations actually broadcast tuition courses and issue textbooks. And of course, all of these features are available to you 24 hours a day, wherever you live in the world. The shortwave bands are also used by many clandestine stations. These are illegal broadcasters of various kinds. They may be pop pirates broadcasting from offshore vessels to the large European cities, or anti-government factions broadcasting from secret headquarters in the heart of their target countries. You will also hear the mysterious number stations, where a sequence of numbers is read in one of several languages. Nobody seems to know for sure what these are or where they come from. Many DXers find these stations a fascinating subject for collecting, and there are regular articles on them in the top DX magazines. If you are serious about the hobby, it is an excellent idea to join a DX club, either a local one or one of the large international associations. There's a list in the booklet enclosed. Tune in to the many DX programs broadcast by the leading radio stations of the world and get hold of a copy of the World Radio and Television Handbook. This is the Bible of shortwave listening. It's the most comprehensive list published, covering the world's radio and television stations on all wavebands. Later in this album, I will be playing you some recordings of the top shortwave stations in order to help you identify them. As you will realize, I cannot be totally comprehensive in the space of one album, and the World Radio and Television Handbook will be invaluable to you if you wish to identify or to learn more about those radio stations which, for one reason or another, could not be included in this record. In many cases, the WRTH includes a bar or two of musical signals, plus a written description of the normal identification. They supply you with the name and address of the station, the board of directors or administrators, frequency details, transmission times, transmitter details, and a host of other essential data. I really cannot recommend this publication highly enough. The editor is Mr. J.M. Frost in Denmark, and the WRTH is published once a year by Billboard Publications. Please refer to the booklet for further details. Incidentally, Billboard also published the World DX Guide, almost 200 pages filled with features on all aspects of DXing. The BBC's monitoring service in Caversham Park, England, publish a monthly news sheet of world broadcasting information, which is an excellent way to update your broadcast band knowledge. They will keep you informed as to frequency and service changes. They even cover clandestine stations, so you can certainly rely on a very good update of information through the BBC. You can write to them for subscription details at the address in the booklet. Listeners to the World Service of the BBC can subscribe to BBC London Calling, which lists and summarises the World Service programmes coming up during the following month. One very interesting DX publication is called Review of International Broadcasting, which is edited and published by Glenn Hauser. This monthly review is refreshingly different. It is more concerned with the content and quality of programmes and programme material than with the technicalities of receiving and DXing. People all over the world write to the magazine discussing shortwave radio programs, and Glenn Hauser conducts a sort of monthly forum through the pages of RIB. Those of you most interested in DXing utility stations, that is non-broadcast stations, are catered for by the SpeedX Utility Guide, which has sections on aviation, weather, marine, time stations, and other utility communications. The top international magazines all have regular features on the shortwave hobby, both amateur and broadcast band, and most countries of the world produce publications keeping you up to date with the wonderful world of DXing. If you ever listen to the BBC World Radio Club, you will immediately recognize this old friend.
My name is Henry Hatch, amateur radio call sign G2CBB, and I'm pleased to have had the privilege of suggesting various ways to assist the armchair DXer to understand the more important points to improve his hobby. Now, I was asked to assist in the compilation of this disc because I've been a DXer now for some 50 years, during which time I was employed by the BBC. And with experience of this kind, I'm pleased to have had the opportunity of offering the armchair DXer some advice as to how to obtain the best results. And I think this disc really does cover the essential points in a comprehensive way. Part of my duty with the BBC was conducting correspondence relating to overseas listeners' reception problems. Looking back on their difficulties, it seems there were really two main problems of unsatisfactory reception. First, the type of aerial, and second, the use of the correct frequency. Well, we've given some advice on the suitability of aerials, but do remember DX signals travel a great distance. They're weak on arrival and require the very best arrangements so that they're able to collect as much energy from the wave as possible. Your local station, by comparison, is overwhelmingly stronger. Also remember the frequency on which you listen. This is important. In general terms, 19 meters or higher during the day, but in darkness, 25 meters or lower in frequency. Now, if you intercept a transmission in a foreign language, don't pass it by as not understood, because broadcasting organizations on the hour and sometimes on the quarter-hour periods make announcements in several languages. There's a great thrill to the DXer to move the tuning control a few kilohertz and to be literally taken from one side of the world to the other. If perhaps you have a cassette recorder, it's well worthwhile recording an announcement that you do not understand, because many of your friendly DXers may recognize the station and be able to help you. But whatever you do, keep a frequency list. Use a separate page for individual wavebands. You'll find how this will build up into a most useful source of information. Well, I do hope the information given on this disc will help you to improve results, and I think it is appropriate that I should leave you with the words so often spoken by radio amateurs: the very best of DX.
Thank you very much, Henry. The shortwave stations of the world use various identification signals in between their programs. After the break, I'll be playing you authentic recordings, which, with two exceptions, were all supplied by the radio stations themselves. The recording quality may not always be of the highest standard, but I'm sure you're going to find them invaluable. Frequencies and transmission times are subject to constant changes, and you may find that some of the information presented for you could have been revised. May I suggest that you keep your information up to date, making use of the publications I've already recommended. And now, stand by.
Hello everyone, you're listening to Radio Australia, the overseas service of the Australian Broadcasting Commission, calling from Melbourne in Victoria.
Radio Australia transmits around the clock 7 days a week in 9 languages. It serves the whole of the world with particular emphasis on countries in Asia.
You You will now hear the interval signal of the Austrian radio shortwave service.
Hier ist der österreichische Rundfunk, Wien.
Austria calling.
Ici l'Autriche. Radio Austria, Vienna.
That was the regular interval signal used by the Austrian radio shortwave service from Vienna. And now, the signature tune for the main daily English informational program. Report from Austria, with news and views from our studio in Vienna. And the same tune is used for parallel broadcasts in German, Spanish, and French. You have been listening to interval signals and signature tunes from the shortwave service of the Austrian radio in Vienna.
You are about to hear a studio recording of a piece of music used by the BBC World Service to introduce the news. The programmes of the BBC World Service, broadcasting from studios in Bush House, London, England, vary from comedy shows, plays and panel games through to documentaries, sports commentaries and the famous BBC World Radio Club. The World Service programmes are broadcast around the clock in English, and the BBC's external service covers a staggering amount of other languages and target areas.
Hier ist Radio Berlin International, die Stimme der Deutschen Demokratischen Republik. This is Radio Berlin International, the voice of the German Democratic Republic.
Radio Berlin International broadcasts daily in 11 languages. They run a fortnightly DX program, and members of the Radio Berlin International DX Club can be awarded a series of diplomas for correct reception reports. In 1980, RBI celebrates its 25th anniversary.
This is Bucharest calling.
This beautiful piece of music comes to you from Romania. Radio Bucharest broadcasts to both of the world in many languages and devotes a lot of their programming to tourism and to music. They have a DX program in English and in German.
Hier spricht Kanada. Ici Radio Canada. This is Canada.
One of the world's major shortwave broadcasters, Radio Canada International, transmits from Montreal by microwave to Sackville, New Brunswick on the East Coast, from where its programs are beamed out to the world. There is a relay station in the UK which is fed by undersea cable from Montreal. CBC also operates a relay for Radio Deutsche Welle.
Η Κύπρος κοντά σας.
The Cyprus Broadcasting Corporation was set up in 1953 by the British administration. It transmits to Cypriots abroad in Greek on the shortwave frequencies of 9.695, 7.190 and 6.155 megahertz. The programs go out every Friday, Saturday and Sunday.
Μια εκπομπή του ραδιοφωνικού Ιδρύματος Κύπρου που μεταδίδεται κάθε Παρασκευή, Σάββατο και Κυριακή αυτή την ώρα για τους ξενιτεμένους μας.
De lytter til Danmarks Radio.
You are tuned to Radio Denmark, Shortwave Department, Copenhagen, Denmark.
The activities of Radio Denmark are devoted to serving Danes abroad and Danish seamen in particular. As a result of this, their shortwave department transmits exclusively in Danish with only the occasional English announcements.
Hier ist die Deutsche Welle.
You're listening to Radio Deutsche Welle, the voice of Germany, broadcasting from Cologne in the Federal Republic of Germany.
Ici la voix de l'Allemagne.
Radio Deutsche Welle, with studios in Cologne in the Federal Republic of Germany, transmits in all the world's principal languages. On the second Saturday in the month, they have a DX program in German and in English.
This is the Far East Broadcasting Company, FEBC Radio International, calling from Manila, Philippines.
The Far East Broadcasting Company is a Christian radio station broadcasting to the world in 73 languages and dialects from their transmitters in the Philippines and Korea. When you hear this, you are in tune with the voice of Greece.
Εδώ είναι ελληνική ραδιοφωνία τηλεόραση. This is Athens. You're listening to the voice of Greece. Ici Athènes, la voix de la Grèce. Hier ist Athen, Sie hören die Stimme Griechenlands.
This is the Voice of the Andes, HCJB, Quito, Ecuador, broadcasting in the English language to Europe in 16 and 19 meters at 17,770 kilohertz and 15,295 kilohertz. For your free copy of our international program schedule, write HCJB, Box 691, Quito, Ecuador. The time now, 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 1900 Greenwich Mean Time.
HCJB, the Voice of the Andes, is operated by the World Radio Missionary Fellowship and supported by donations and gifts. Always a very strong station on the shortwaves, HCJB produces the DX party line in 5 languages. Radio Japan transmits programs in French, English, German, Italian, Spanish, Chinese, Arabic, Korean, and many others. The Japan Broadcasting Corporation is widely known as NHK, which stands for Nippon Hoso Kyokai. Their headquarters are in Tokyo. Before this opening music, they beam a signal played on the Celeste. They regularly broadcast language tuition in Japanese and transmit weekly DX programs in English and also in German.
Good evening, everyone. This is Radio Japan, the overseas broadcasting service of NHK in Tokyo. We are now broadcasting to Europe on 9.605 megahertz in the 31-meter band and 11.950 megahertz in the 25-meter band.
This is Radio Korea, the overseas service of the Korean Broadcasting System, coming to you from Seoul, the capital of the Republic of Korea.
You have just heard the identification of Radio Korea's foreign service, which transmits programs of half an hour's duration in 9 languages. Their general service is broadcast on 9.525 megahertz and 7.275 megahertz. This is the identification of RTL, previously known as Radio Luxembourg. A successful commercial station, it's based in the Grand Duchy of Luxembourg and operates in several European languages.
This is Broadcasting Malta, transmitting on 9670 kilohertz, 31 meters, in the shortwave band on Radio Mediterrane from Malta. Greetings to you all wherever you are, and welcome to another edition of our weekly program Malta Calling. Every Saturday at this time, that is from 0700 to 0800 hours GMT, we bring you 60 minutes of music, news and information from the island of Malta in the center of the Mediterranean.
One of the most familiar radio sounds wherever you live in the world is the enormous international service of Radio Moscow. Listen out for this identification.
Dit is Radio Nederland Wereldomroep in Hilversum.
This is the Dutch World Broadcasting System, Radio Nederland, in Hilversum, Holland.
Radio Nederland broadcasts every day in Arabic, English, Spanish, Indonesian, Portuguese, French and Dutch. Their transmitters are in Lopik, near Utrecht, and they're particularly well known for their Sunday show, The Happy Station, a worldwide request program. This show has even been known to feature live phone-ins. Their DX Jukebox program is broadcast in English, French and Spanish. They issue an excellent range of DX literature free of charge to anybody requesting this service.
This is the national program and shortwave service of Radio New Zealand.
The shortwave service of Radio New Zealand mainly rebroadcast their national programs and at times the sports services, as well as special Pacific language broadcasts originating from Auckland. They have a famous DX program, Arthur Cushion's DX World, transmitted on the first Sunday of the month at 09:15. This is the world's only DX session written, produced and broadcast by a listener from his own DXing. This is the signature tune for the overseas service of Radio Norway, which was officially opened by His Majesty King Haakon VII in 1948. The main objective of Radio Norway is to stay in touch with fellow Norwegians around the world, including 30,000 Norwegian seamen. English programming is limited to 30 minutes per week, and there is a 5-minute newscast in Spanish once a week. Its transmitters are located at Fredrikstad in the extreme southeast of the country. This is the identification signal for Polish Radio Warsaw. This signal is repeated in between each language announcement. Here are 3 examples of the language announcement starting with Polish.
Tu mówi Warszawa.
This is Warsaw calling.
Ici Varsovie.
Warsaw broadcasts the DX program in Swedish and in Finnish, and they have special programs for Polish seamen abroad.
Praha, československé zahraniční vysílání.
Počúvate Prahu, vysielanie pre Čechov a Slovákov v zahraničí.
This is Radio Prague, Czechoslovakia. Ici Prague, Czechoslovakie.
This multitude of languages comes to you from Czechoslovakia, where the World Service of Radio Prague operates all across the shortwave band. They also put out an extremely good program for radio amateurs and shortwave listeners in several languages.
This is Radio RSA, the voice of South Africa from Johannesburg.
Ici Radio RSA, la voix de l'Afrique du Sud, émettant de Johannesburg.
De Joanesburgo fala-vos da Rádio RSA, a voz da África do Sul.
Radio RSA, Die Stem van South Africa, the voice of South Africa, broadcasts from Johannesburg in a multitude of African languages, in English, Dutch, Afrikaans, French and German, amongst others. Their DX program in English is called DX Corner and is presented by Jerry Wood. They also have DX programs in French, German and in Dutch. When you hear this sound, you are tuned to Saudi Arabian radio coming to you from Jeddah.
إذاعة المملكة العربية السعودية.
Desde Madrid, Radio Exterior de España. Servicio Internacional.
This is the international service of Spanish Foreign Radio, broadcasting from Madrid.
The Voice of Spain broadcasts in Arabic, English and Spanish. They operate with transmitter strengths ranging from 50 to 350 kilowatts.
Sveriges Radio utlandsprogrammet.
You are tuned to Radio Sweden, Stockholm.
Radio Sweden broadcasts from Stockholm in 7 different languages. Try to listen to their weekly DX program.
Swiss Radio International.
Schweizer Radio International.
Radio Svizzera Internazionale.
Radio Suisse Internationale.
This is the sound of the Swiss Radio Orchestra playing the identification music for Swiss Radio International in Bern. Their overseas service broadcasts in English, French, German, Italian, Spanish, Portuguese, Arabic, Romansh and Esperanto. Listen out for Swiss Shortwave Merry-Go-Round on the 2nd and 4th Saturdays and Sundays.
This is Trans World Radio, broadcasting from the sunshiny island of Bonaire in the Netherlands Antilles, the international sound of the Caribbean.
One of the warmest sounds on the shortwaves is Trans World Radio, a religious and educational station. Trans World Radio broadcasts restful programs and beautiful music in most of the major languages. Their DX program, DX Special, is broadcast every Thursday and Saturday.
Günaydın. Burası TRT2 uzun dalga 1648 metre 182 kHz Ankara ve orta dalga 428 metre 701 kHz İstanbul vericilerinden yayın yapan Türkiye Radyoları 2. programı.
This is the Voice of Turkey, broadcasting for listeners in Asia on the 19-meter band, 15,125 kilohertz.
The Foreign Service of Turkish Radio broadcasts in 8 languages. Every day from 22:30 to 22:45, they present DX News in English.
This is the United Nations in New York.
United Nations Radio broadcasts in many languages on shortwave and is also relayed by more than 120 countries. Listen out for the exciting broadcasts of the Security Council transmitted live when in session. United Nations Radio, like most radio stations, will be happy to send you their program schedules if you write to them. The Voice of America, with headquarters in Washington, is one of the world's major shortwave broadcasters. Specializing in news and documentary programs, there is no part of the world VOA cannot reach. One Voice of America feature is Special English. The English language is slowed right down in order that it may be understood by beginners. The following is a specially recorded version of their identification tune, Yankee Doodle Dandy. This bird call is the identification of the external service of Radio Zambia, broadcasting to Central, South and Southeast Africa in English and local languages.
Zambia Broadcasting Services, this is the external service of Radio Zambia. This is Lusaka calling. One Zambia, one nation.
And that completes our selection of radio station identification signals. I hope this record has been of value to you, and whether you're a beginner or an experienced shortwave listener, join me, won't you, in saying, long live shortwave.